Play aggressive. Play aggressive. We gotta play aggressive to win. Play to win. Turn it loose. Stay in the moment. One play at a time.
Von Allen Sports.
Now to another developing big story. Tonight, a former NFL player responds after revelations that Saints players were paid to injure him and other players on the field.
After years of history-making accomplishments, the NFL investigation is casting a dark cloud over the Saints organization.
The New Orleans Saints were accused of paying their players under-the-table money to take out star players on opposing teams from the seasons of 2009 to 2011. Now, there has always been a type of program in locker rooms for achievements or big hits. 95% of the time, it's something done between players, and their coaches either don't know about it or do know, but they just don't care. Many players hide it from their coaches in fear of reprimand. The NFL's position they want to convey is that monetary reward for such a thing is crossing the line.
Very clear. We have a serious violation of an existing rule that threatens the health and welfare of our players. In addition, this went on for three years.
The moment this thing went from being called locker room competition to bounty, changes everything. Usually players have these things between each other as a sign of pride or machoism or competitive nature to outdo their teammates.
That players, if you will, it's almost like an office pool. They will put money, the players, into a pool to incent a player to make a big play, but not to injure. These guys fraternize together. They go out. Many of them are represented by the same agents. They're not looking to hurt somebody to end their career, but they are looking to play hard, and that they do.
But it was elevated to bounty, a much more sinister endeavor. The moment the NFL can attach the idea of money being exchanged, it's now in their jurisdiction to attack. How dare you circumvent official channels of revenue and possibly even violate the salary cap? Right or wrong? This is just how it is. So, if someone who has never heard of NFL football, but recently heard about BountyGate and wanted me to describe everything about it in a short term, the best phrase I would use is simply 3 letters. CTE. Oh, I won't lie. There was a massive scandal going on, but it wasn't in New Orleans. It was at NFL headquarters. After pathologist Bennett Amalu, basically a guy who does an autopsy, he discovered this very strange and abnormal desecration of the brain in people too young to have it, and he eventually discovered it was from head trauma. Many former NFL players had died for this discovery to happen because it can only be found after death by physically exploring the brain. And now, where the problem comes in for the NFL is that they knew. They had known for quite some time that there was a large correlation between head injuries and basically going mad. CTE became a massive weapon for former players to wield against the NFL in order to get medical care, compensation for making the league the billion-dollar empire it is today, and I think they deserved it. Commissioner at the time, Paul Tagliabue, retired as a fallout from the CTE issue, and the owners elevated former Jets public relations manager Roger Goodell to commissioner of the most powerful sports league in America.
What I'm here to do now is protect the shield.
Now, when a company is in bad trouble publicly, they have to make a splash. Changing out commissioners is really good for optics, but that wasn't the only reason. Goodell wasn't picked by mere chance. The owners picked him for his ability to deflect, deny, and persuade, just like a good politician does, but a politician who serves his boss's interest. Make no mistake, Roger Goodell is the voice of the owners, or whatever the majority vote of the owners want. Roger Goodell is not absolute power behind the throne. The owners are. How do you think a guy like Roger has survived so many scandals?
And after everything that happened in the NFL this year, who would have thought Roger Goodell would still be here? A survivor!
And not only kept his job, but he got a new, even bigger contract recently. A ridiculous one, somewhere around $40 million a year. It's crazy. He got it because he's excellent at his job. And what is his job again? Doing what he's told. Taking the bullet. Sure, he makes the smaller decisions like fines and player-related stuff on a day-to-day basis, but the big things, he's just a figurehead. Remember back when the war on tobacco and smoking became a huge deal? All the big-time tobacco companies gathered together and hired people specifically to do their will. It's the same in the NFL. Whatever the majority of the owners want, they get. It's Goodell's job to see it through as cleanly as possible, but while also being
Baba Yaga, the boogeyman.
This protects the owners' reputations as they have other companies and endeavors as well, and their image has to be held up. The players have to trust their owner. Now that Goodell was commissioner, he had to come in with some fire. So, in his first huge act as commish, he handed down a punishment for a huge scandal to show that he is not to be ignored and disobeyed. One thing that I've seen from Goodell is that he does not like being disrespected. If you ignore him or lie to him, he seems to attack even more. And it makes sense when you think about it. Now, as the years went by, the CTE and Players Union lawsuit had become a huge deal. But then, something fell into their lap. Enter the snitch.
Warren called you out as being the whistleblower.
Yeah, he did.
For BountyGate in New Orleans.
He called me out on NFL Network about the whistleblower. And so I'd like to go back to New Orleans, but I would like to go back with people saying, "Oh, you're a snitch." And it's not about here's a lot of money, and if you take out this guy or you hurt this guy, you get the money. It's very inaccurate from the doors that I've been behind. Like I said, if you say something like that, you better have a good source, and I don't think his source is all that credible.
No, not that guy. This guy.
Some of the materials, printed materials that the whistleblower turned in may not have actually been real. And I think Roger Goodell overreacted. I know he can't get out of it. And look, the Saints are not the evil guys they're being made out to be.
Do you have any idea who the employee is?
Yeah, I do. The former defensive quality control coach. His name is Mike Cerullo.
But for Mike Cerullo, keeping to a code or even being a real man wasn't on his list of priorities. He retaliated like a crazy chick keying your car.
The disgruntled employee who happens to work for the league now, we knew we were firing after the season. This was a deal done. And the Saints, we knew better too.
One thing I will tell you, never ever trust someone with a vendetta. They are in a different mental state under those conditions. There's no reasoning with them. They are angry, and they will say anything and feel justified about it. Perhaps even do anything. Think about it. Remember the last time you were really, really pissed off? You probably said some crazy stuff, even embellished because you didn't care about the consequences or the feelings of the person. You were angry, and in that moment, that is all that matters. And during that moment, you are invincible. All logic, reason, and decency has left the building. So never trust an informant who's jaded. Hell hath no fury like a person scorned. The problem is that this moron was the NFL's star informant witness. Great! From this point, the Saints were going down, no matter what. It was all formality at this point. Cerullo gave them what they needed. This was a golden egg. In PR terms, this guy was a useful idiot. Now, he testified that he kept track of payments made in negotiations, targets, things like that. The problem with this is no one I know has yet to see proof of it. It's all hearsay. Or the NFL claiming that they've got it. Basically, the NFL was going off of it's more probable than not that Cerullo was telling the truth, or it's more probable than not that there was a bounty program. And hey, when has that ever stopped the NFL? Okay, moving on. Cerullo admitted he was angry after being fired. Now, it's worth noting that for becoming persona non grata in the state of Louisiana, it is presumed he was rewarded handsomely. In 2017, he was hired by the NFL as Director of Football Administration. I mean, that is incredible. What was that his payment? They just had to let years go by. More scandals erupt. The lawsuit settled, and when the dust clears, they give him his dream job. Well, it all sounds perfect, doesn't it? Now, I can't prove that that was their intent, but the fact they hired him is odd. I would have stayed as far away from this guy as possible after everything was finished. I certainly wouldn't put him in the league office. Usually things like that happen because somebody has dirt on you. But the NFL says that they have evidence, so they have to protect the shield, and they deserve us to review the facts. In March of 2012, it was announced that the NFL had hard evidence of this bounty program based on 18,000 documents.
They examined a lot of forensic evidence, and I'm guessing that means emails.
I don't even know what that means. Okay, how do you have 18,000 documents for anything that's not something to do with aliens or a war with China? That's just crazy. I don't even know if that's a convincing amount of evidence or trying too hard to kill a fly with a bazooka. These documents claim Gregg Williams started the bounty program right when he arrived in 2009, and an estimated 20 to 30 players weren't involved, apparently. These findings were making some really specific claims, like exact number amounts of 10 grand to knock out Favre in the NFC Championship. They even claim they targeted Kurt Warner in the game previous to that, and then even Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton in 2011. But it's important to note that while the NFL was using Favre getting hit as the poster child for their campaign, that very same season, Favre had committed an illegal crackback block injury on a Texans player. But remember, this is all about player safety. Nothing to do with CTE, right?
We need to find out in the first 2 series of the game, the little wide receiver, number 10, about his concussion. We need to put a lick on him right now. We need to decide whether Crabtree wants to be a fake prima donna or he wants to be a tough guy. We need to find that out. He becomes human. They got that outside ACL. We need to decide on how many times we can beat Frank Gore's head. We need to decide how many times we can bull rush and we can put Vernon Davis's ankles on this pile. We need to decide, and when they are fearing us, they give us the ball. Alex Smith in the preseason game, when you guys avalanche that motherfucker had eyes that big. You all saw him.
Well, but are you saying that there, in your judgment, there was no bounty at all on the part of the New Orleans Saints? None at all?
Having seen nearly 50,000 pages of evidence and nearly 20 hours of testimony, I know that there was no bounty put on players by Saints players.
There was no payment for taking somebody out of the game?
Absolutely not.
Brett Favre said in his book later that he did not condemn the Saints for anything.
JB, it's interesting. There's some mixed reaction. We have Brett Favre coming out saying, hey, it's football. I don't really think it's a big deal.
He did say he thought they were hitting harder or unnecessarily more than normal. But that wasn't his first time that he had been lit up many times in a game and by other teams during his career.
But again, there's nothing you can do about it.
How concerned are you about the long-term side effects?
Only when I do interviews like this.
Okay.
No sense in worrying about something you can't control. Right now, there's no sense in worrying. I mean, I feel, I can't say I feel normal. I don't know what normal, but I feel pretty good.
The game plan for the Saints that day was to hit hard and early. Be physical. Send a message. This is the mantra of many coaches. But now this had gone beyond a simple power game about showing the NFL's stance on violence in the NFL. They claimed the coaches were involved all the way up to the general manager. And this opens up a whole can of worms, especially after the NFL claimed they had warned the Saints before of this practice.
It wasn't injure and get this. It was, hey, this is what we need to do to be successful. And obviously the rhetoric, and it's still used by Gregg today. I mean, it's crazy.
We hit Smith right there. Remember me. I got the first one. Go get it. Go lay that right.
Remember what I said earlier about crossing the shield? Yeah, they don't like it. Enter Peter King. The NFL was his lord and master. He plastered the Saints across the front page of the most famous sports magazine ever that basically convicted the Saints of the crime.
Sports Illustrated has Jonathan Vilma on the cover, and it says bounty culture, this asshole Peter King. F*** you, motherfucker.
There were no question marks or rhetorical statements, just flat out finger pointing. Actually, not even that. It was more like Peter King was that friend of yours who's cheering you on while you beat a person's okay? His article and his cover was almost cocky. Like, look at what we did to you. Or, you're in trouble now, sort of thing. The arrogance behind it is disgusting. If Peter King ever had any journalistic integrity, it left him the day after orientation of his first job. When you publish things in this manner, the public has already decided. The average person is not going to look more into it. They assume large media outlets are telling us the truth. Well, not that much anymore, but when this was going on, they still had a little bit of credibility. Enough at least to destroy the reputation of so many. The first step in trying to win a publicity battle is to ruin the other person's character. Villainize them. Publish as much random crap as possible, even if it's just little stuff. You do this every single day, and then eventually it becomes a staple in the public consciousness that the person or entity in question is guilty. When someone goes on the offensive early in a battle like this, I raise my eyebrow. It's usually a sign of an ulterior motive or them protecting a secret, like perhaps they are wrong or perhaps they have no proof.
Well, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. Didn't you tell me that once?
This is a useful trick by lawyers, usually district attorneys who offer you a deal to minimize your sentence. Why? Because they have no proof. And what the NFL was doing in cahoots with Sports Illustrated and ESPN absolutely reeked of this concept. Now, you have to understand from the NFL's perspective, they were trying to protect themselves. It's something any one of us would probably do. So I can see their perspective. Like a cat backed into a corner, it's going to go all out, whatever it takes. This Saints situation was the most valuable thing that they ever could have dreamed of to send their message that they care about player safety.
It's just the truth. Our league's no different than a large political party. They're experts at pushing their message through the media. Look, it was in full force, it meaning the league, the machine, in pushing their message out early.
They were in a deep hole, and crucifying someone would get them out of it. They claimed Coach Sean Payton told his coaches to make sure they had their ducks in a row, basically meaning that their stories were straight. But realistically, this could mean anything. Remember, this whole case is about the difference between a bounty agreement in the locker room for free versus a paid one. That's it, really, honestly. If we're just how something is phrased is relevant. The intent of the phrase or the sentence is relevant. Let's talk about the actual crime. There is so much hypocrisy involved that it's hard to stomach. Remember when Albert Hainsworth blatantly stepped on the head of a Cowboys player whose helmet was off while he was on the ground? I was watching that live when it happened. It was the most disgusting act I'd ever seen on a football field. I thought the dude was going to be banned for life. But nope. Not only did he get to play again, he was rewarded by the Redskins with a $100 million deal. If I had been the NFL at the time, that piece of crap would have been gone forever. But hey, cool, you know? What Albert did was far worse than anything that allegedly happened in that Saints locker room. You know why? Because a lot of the so-called bounty hits weren't even flagged. But stomping on an exposed head with spikes when you're a 300-pound defensive lineman? So, let me make sure I have this correct. Spikes on exposed head, okay, good, that's fine. Putting money on injuring players in a football-related play? Not okay. Oh, you crossed the line. You definitely crossed the line here. The difference here? Money and PR. Were the Saints encouraging injuries? I'm sure some of that went on. Was it blown out of proportion? Absolutely.